When it comes to romance manga, there are a lot of different types. And despite me being a queer reader who predominantly reads queer stories, I want to focus today on some of the best straight romance manga that I have ever read. I've picked my 5 favorites. Several of them are very recent reads as well, and I want to talk about what makes them so great. They're all modern romance manga. I'm going to avoid the classics for now because they've been talked about to death. Let's talk about some great modern, straight-ish romance manga. The first one is My Dress-Up Darling by Shinichi Fukuda. This one is pretty famous. In fact, it had an anime adaptation that was received brilliantly by fans. I watched it, I loved it. The animation is absolutely stellar, the comedy is intact, and it follows the manga so far very, very closely. Regardless of whether you've seen the anime or you haven't, I recommend the manga wholeheartedly. We begin with an awkward high school boy called Gojo. He is studying under his grandfather to make Hina dolls. They are his love, his passion, his craft. They are everything to him, and he's very good at it. But he's a lonely high school loser. He doesn't have a social life, and his Hina dolls are everything to him. One day, his sewing machine breaks, and so he uses one at school, and while he's in that sewing room making some Hina dolls, the most popular girl in his class comes in, and it's revealed that she has her own big love and obsession, which is cosplaying. And she's been attempting to make her own cosplay outfits for Comic-Cons, etc. And she's terrible at it. And so she asks him to make costumes for her. And so she becomes his dress-up darling. What makes this such a wholesome and hilarious romance manga is the fact that Gojo is such an awkward thing. The popular girl, Kitagawa, is brazen. She's powerful, she's fiery, and she's very much unprudish, while he is incredibly flustered all of the time. This manga is full of awkward fan service. If you don't like fan service, if you don't like the male gaze, if any of that irritates you, this manga will piss you off. It pisses me off. There's no excuse for the amount of camel toes that are in every chapter of this manga. But it's Gojo's presence and attitude that saves it from being something just disgusting. Gojo is a sweet and wholesome boy, and he is our real perspective character. He is kind, he gets flustered easily, he obviously likes Kitagawa, who wouldn't, but he's so respectful, and his shock and frustration, his prudishness, his awkwardness, all of this is what makes the comedy of this manga work so well. He is hilarious, constantly reacting to having to measure her or just see her in a bikini. He's amazing at it. And you really feel for his frustration and his awkwardness while being impressed by how brazen and confident she is. But at its core, this is a manga about our hobbies and our passions. Irrespective of our gender, the things that we love that are not people or places, these are our hobbies, our interests, our arts and crafts. And these are two people whose hobbies unexpectedly meet and intertwine so perfectly, leading to a budding romance that crawls along really slowly, really teasingly, in a really satisfying way. I expected My Dress-Up Darling to just be a bit too gross, too much male gaze, but I was so surprised to find out that it's actually full of heart and, most importantly, full of comedy. The next manga on this list is the only one that has a queer element to it, and that is My Love Mix-Up. This was written by Aruko and drawn by Wataru Hinekure, and together they've created something really, really lovely. They say right at the beginning that this is a silly story, and it is. But it's also one, again, that is just full of heart. It made me think about the fact that a love triangle is never actually a triangle. Usually a love triangle is a situation where one person has to choose between two others, and quite often this is a straight situation. A straight girl has to choose between two guys, or vice versa. In My Love Mix-Up, you have an actual perfect love triangle. This is about 3 high school kids. They're all in a class together, and we begin with Aoki. This is a blonde boy who has a crush on the girl sitting next to him. But we find out within the first 2 pages that the girl, Hashimoto, actually has a crush on another boy in the class, Ida. She lends Aoki her eraser, and she's written Ida's name with a heart next to it. And Aoki goes, "Oh, shit, I have a crush on her, but she has a crush on him. Bollocks. But then he drops the eraser, and Ida picks it up and sees his name with the heart next to it, thinks that the eraser belongs to Aoki, and now thinks that Aoki is the one who has a crush on him. When Aoki attempts to explain it to Ida, Ida kind of interrupts him and says, well, you know, it's sweet that you have a crush on me. I've never had a crush on anyone before. Maybe I'm gay. And he doesn't know. He's open to it. Ida doesn't know if he's gay, straight, bi, ace. He doesn't know what he is. And so he goes, well, yeah, maybe. And then he forms a bond with Aoki. He wants to stay close to him. He's considering dating him. While Aoki never even liked Ida to begin with, he liked the girl, Hashimoto. So now you've got a love triangle. A straight boy likes a straight girl who likes a straight guy who might be gay, and into that first boy. So you actually have a triangle. And that's how the manga begins, but as it grows, as it develops, there are a lot of really, really fun twists and turns. The developments, the way that the love continues to mix up, really takes you by surprise, and I'm not going to spoil any of it. But this is another sweet, wholesome, and funny manga that is very open with the way that it explores straight and queer relationships. In fact, there is no border between them, really. These are just people falling in love, people having crushes, people fantasizing and getting excited, irrespective of their gender or sexual orientation. It's really, really wholesome and sweet. Next up is Love Me Not by Io Sakisaka. She's probably most famous for writing the manga Aoharu Ride, which is a lot more famous than this one, so I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about this one instead. Love Me Not has two protagonists, two girls who have just started high school together. At the beginning, these two girls have both had to say goodbye to a childhood friend and then meet each other and kind of have that in common as they enter a new high school together, both kind of on the wrong foot. Both a little bit nervous. But what's interesting about them is that these two girls are unlikely friends. They have very different attitudes to life and especially love and romance. Yuna is a romantic. Her first ever crush was on a prince from a picture book that she read as a kid. And then she sees a boy who kind of reminds her of that prince, and it's kind of love at first sight. And she explains to Akari, the other girl, that she's just gonna wait around for her Prince Charming. I'm sure he'll come along. And Akari says, no, you can't just wait around. You've got to fuck about and find out. Go date people. Go get crushes. Move from one boy to another if the first one doesn't work out. You've got to get out there and see the world and experience love, experience heartbreak, flirt with people, have fun. Neither of these are really wrong. The author makes it clear that these are just two different attitudes to love, romance, and dating. But it's now an opportunity for these two girls to kind of learn from each other, to teach each other, and to support each other. Because this manga goes to some very dramatic soap opera places, as kids start to gossip and banter and make fun of each other and bully each other, and these two girls are at the center of it sometimes. They need to support each other, defend each other, learn from each other, like I said. And each girl has a boy in her life, which the other one then gets to know. And those boys are also going to help them with love. They might be romantic interests, they might not, I won't spoil any of it. But a romance manga that focuses on two heroines with different attitudes to love is a really, really refreshing thing that I hugely enjoy. This next one I'm recommending with a bit of a caveat, and that is Horimiya. Horimiya is a very, very popular romance manga, and it was adapted into a very, very successful romance anime. I watched the anime, and then I decided to read some of the manga. I like it, I certainly like its concept, and I really like its himbo protagonist. There's a lot to love in Horimiya. The caveat, however, is that there's a lot of jokes that I would describe as sometimes homophobic and even transphobic. I was surprised to see that there's a bit of light bigotry in this manga that made me very uncomfortable. I want to enjoy it in spite of that, but it's difficult, and I don't see why I should. I'm still recommending it as a romance manga. If you want to read it, if you want to enjoy it, great. I read the first volume, I watched the first season of the anime, and I think that there are so many good aspects to it. And in fact, the anime actually tones down these jokes. When I read the manga, I was surprised by just how much more homophobia is kind of laced into it. So that's my caveat. The dynamic between Hori and Miyamura is this. She is an honor student. She's popular, she's intelligent, she's hardworking. He is a himbo. He's a middle-of-the-road kid, he's very introverted, he keeps himself to himself, and then she finds out that he's covered in tattoos and piercings, and he's secretly edgy. What's nice about this manga is that these two people are very fleshed out in their own right. Romance is important, but they are still human beings. And they each get explored and fleshed out. You've got their family dynamics, you get their history, you get a big supporting cast of friends that you get to know. There's a lot going on outside of the romance between the two of them. And what's also refreshing is that this isn't really a will they, won't they story. They get together really quickly. And then this is about what happens after that. This is about how they maintain a relationship. How their relationship is tangled up with their own personal dramas, especially family stuff and their relationships to their friends. How our circumstances, our environments impact our love lives. This is a very grounded romance story. There's still a lot of comedy in there, especially in the dynamics between the two protagonists, but this is more like a soap opera. This is big. Still on an intimate scale. You're still just focusing on two people and the family and friends around them. But there's a lot to enjoy here in terms of these dynamics. And the banter between the two protagonists is endlessly amusing, especially given just how different they are as people. Horimiya is not perfect, but there's a lot to enjoy, and it's certainly a more original romance manga. The way that it goes about developing its plot and characters is pretty unique, and I recommend it for that reason. And the last one is one that you will at least have heard of, if not already read and watched, because it is arguably one of the biggest manga and anime, romance or not, of the last few years, and that's Kaguya-sama Love is War. This is written and drawn by Aka Akasaka, which is so much fun to say. And it is so good. It's difficult to overstate how good it is, but you may or may not already know that. Kaguya-sama Love is War is something else entirely. It is an episodic manga and anime that has a plot that develops in the background, but focuses on moment-to-moment interactions. Our two main protagonists are the two brightest kids in a very prestigious private school in Tokyo. And these two kids make up the student council at their school, the president and the vice president. And they each have crushes on the other, but they are too proud to admit it. Love is war. They will never, at least we assume at the beginning, admit their feelings to the other. That is shameful, it is embarrassing, it is cowardly. And so, they need to make the other fall for them or admit their feelings. And every chapter is a single, self-contained to a point story in which some shenanigans ensue and one wins and the other loses. Or it's a tie. There are so many of these scenarios, so many moments, and the vast majority of them take place in the student council room between the two of them and the other 2 or 3 support members of this hilarious cast. And that's it. They each love each other, they will never admit it, and so they play a game of chicken. That's it, that's the whole situation. And it's incredible. And it's very heartfelt, because as the plot slowly moves forward, there are specific moments that really tug at your heartstrings. Moments where you really think it's going to happen. And even when it doesn't, we've taken a step forward. The barriers come down. They've suffered a bit of humiliation. They've become a bit more human and honest and vulnerable with each other. They get closer as time moves on, as they get to know each other, as they pull pranks on each other or worm each other into specific awkward situations and back each other into corners. The comedy in this manga is hysterical. If you've watched the anime, you know it is laugh out loud funny. If you've read the manga, the same is true there. If you haven't, I urge you to watch or read Kaguya-sama. There is nothing like it. It is so good. I love it to bits. It's fantastic. Okay, there you go. Those are 5 romance manga that I really, really enjoy. They've all been written in the last few years. I enjoy them all immensely for different reasons, and I hope you do too. Subscribe for books.